Season 4 of Code is finally out. After being announced all the way back in 2024, it finally began. And on April 1st of 2026, we got 4 episodes back to back. This is by far the best season in terms of adapting the source material. However, it still missed a few details that became integral to understanding this first arc. So, let's talk about it. Episode 1 begins with Miyaki walking up to Ayanokoji, mentioning how he didn't attend many of the group meetings over the break and that his friends miss having him around. Ayanokoji promises he'll try to come over more often. Chabashira then arrives and begins explaining a new system to the class. While the students already notice that the typical blackboard has been replaced with a screen and more modern equipment for the students. The teacher also revealed that there'll be a new system for judging students, particularly via individual ability, through an app called the Overall Ability app. It judges students based on academic ability, physical ability, adaptability, and social contribution, having a max score of 100, then giving them an overall ability score based on this formula. Every student in the school will have an OAA score, and anyone can see that score at any time. The scores get updated at the end of each month throughout the school year. Chabashira goes on to explain how the partner exam works next. Essentially, second years will team up with first years. Each duo will take on exams on all the subjects in their respective curriculums, and the duo score will be averaged out. If the duo gains less than 500 points together, then the second year in the duo gets expelled, while the first year loses their private points income for 3 months. This causes Airi and Ike to panic as the students are seeking guidance from Hirata, as is stated in the novel that they both currently have the lowest rating in the class. Suzune brings up the fact that the app has predicted amount of points each rating will get, and that this would help everyone know the lowest rating they should pair up with to stay in the green. In the novel, this wasn't a quality of the OAA app, but rather something Chabashira explained directly. In both mediums, it's still Suzune who suggests the idea of not having to team up with the highest rating to pass, setting an example that a student with an E rating can still get through if they team up with someone of a B rating. We pan over to Ayanokoji, who deduces that these rules and this exam will definitely set up by the current chairman of the school, Tsukishiro, as one rule stood out in particular, which is that any student who's caught purposely changing their grade to be worse will get expelled as well. Notice the wording here. They're not saying that the second year student will be exempt from expulsion if their first year partner did this. Naturally, who would even think of deliberately scoring lower and risking expulsion anyway? Certainly not any normal student. But for the White Roomer, it's completely different. So through this loophole, the White Room agent could effectively pull a kamikaze and just take down Ayanokoji with them while leaving the school at the same time. So now Ayanokoji is playing Russian roulette with the student body of the first year. This is a good time to bring up that in season 4, the anime fully retconned their own mistake with the student count, changing it to 40 students per class like it was in the novel, as opposed to the 25 students back in season 1 to 3. We cut to a scene with Suzune and Ayanokoji walking together, talking about the deal they had before about challenging each other in the next midterms in one subject. They both get a notification from an announcement Ichinose made, where she made a meet and greet for the first and second years to make the first years more comfortable with teaming up with their seniors. Suzune and Ayanokoji realize that this means Ryuuen and Arisu will take their own approaches in the exam, approaches that will likely involve the use of bribery. However, Class D doesn't have that luxury, so they have to find another way. They went to check the meet and greet to see the students who attended. Suro had joined them at this point. Suzune quickly understood Ichinose's strategy. She wasn't trying to talk to the first years about the partner exam, but rather establish herself and her class as a trustworthy ally they can rely on in the future. While Suro wants to snatch the smart students quickly, Suzune understands that they can't beat Ichinose's class in socializing, so she opts for going for the class that had no students attend at all, Class 1D. They leave and head for Class 1D, meeting Hashimoto on the way, who comments with Suzune on Ichinose's typical approach, while keeping Arisu's approach secretive. His appearance is abrupt in the anime, but in the novel, Ayanokoji actually spotted him when they went to the gymnasium where the meet and greet was happening. Before they reached Class 1D, they're met by Ryuuen, who says that they're late, but that he also couldn't find anyone to proceed. Him and Suzune have a back and forth before he ultimately decides to leave them, giving Suzune one clue, which is that the first years seem awfully calm for people who just arrived here. This is the first scene in the season that is heavily cut down compared to the novel counterpart. First, in the novel, Suzune actually observed the other classes before getting to Class 1D, which is the context of why Ryuuen commented on the students being more calm and well behaved. Second, Ryuuen actually commented on Suzune getting a bodyguard, talking about Suro. This is actually important, as it's subtle evidence of Ryuuen accepting that, at least on surface level, that Suzune had taken the wheel for Class 2D, since just like every other class leader, she had someone by her side who'd increase her intimidation factor, like him with Albert or Arisu with Hashimoto. Ryuuen essentially is noticing Suzune's development from the closed-off person she once was. course. Lastly, Ayanokoji has a monologue regarding Ryuen's comment, solidifying why the first year's calmness is weird, saying how the time frame made no sense and that it's possible that the school had some sort of goal and revealed extra information to the first years early on. Back to the anime. Suzune, Sudo, and Ayanokoji reach class 1D and realize that it's entirely empty. By the end of the day, 22 students got partners. The anime only tells us this the next day, right before Hosen and Nanase approach the second years. In the novel, they introduce themselves with last names only, and they check the academic abilities of those who spoke to them before applying, meaning Suzune and Sudo. This was meant to show their attitude against their seniors more clearly. Obviously, in the anime, such a thing isn't needed, so those details were changed to Nanase introducing herself by her full name and only checking Sudo's score to mock him directly. Hosen and Nanase explained that the first years are in a superior position, as they could simply opt out of pairing up, leading the second years, specifically Class D, would take the penalty of 5% and might end up getting expelled. In comparison, losing 3 months of private points isn't that drastic. Hosen's attitude angers Sudo a lot, and despite avoiding a fight, Hosen pushes him to the floor and mocks his weakness. This prompts Sudo to go in to attack Hosen, but he's stopped by Isaki, who restrains him physically, then tells off Hosen for insulting his seniors. This is when Ryuen interrupts him, telling him to not pick a fight with Hosen for his own good. In the novel, Ishizaki isn't this aggressive, he simply jumps between Sudo and Hosen. Nanase also speaks up, talking about how if his goal is violent, then she'll leave immediately, since she only accompanied him to discuss with the second years. He says that he wasn't being violent at all and gives a half-hearted apology to Sudo. This ticks off Ishizaki, who didn't like his peers being looked down upon and was about to grab Hosen. This is when Ryuen interferes, something that surprised Ibuki and even Ayanokoji, since both knew that such scenarios were Ryuen's bread and butter. It's very out of character for him to not take this chance to fight. Hosen and Ryuen recognize each other and trade insults, each claiming the other was the one running away from a direct confrontation, both seemingly very calm. But in the novel, Hosen was a lot more excited to find out that he managed to meet up with Ryuen. Hosen provokes Ryuen to no avail, so he changes gears and attacks Ibuki instead. In the anime, this garners no action from Ryuen or anyone else for that matter. But in the novel, Ryuen actually attacks Hosen because of this, and Ishizaki joins in as well. Nanase breaks up the fight by bringing up a leverage she has over Hosen, a sort of deal they agreed over. This causes Hosen to let go of Ibuki, but say that if she does her part badly, then he will not hold back against her either, and Nanase readies his challenge head on. The episode ends with Shiba showing up, causing Nanase and Hosen to leave. Nanase, however, gives Ayanokoji one final glare before she goes. Episode 2 begins with the direct aftermath of this. Takuya Yagami appears, introducing himself to Kushida after he had recognized her, claiming they went to school together. In the novel, he actually showed up before Shiba and was the one who fended off Hosen, telling him he should be the one to leave first, considering the commotion he's done. It's only after this exchange does Shiba arrive. Takuya insists on teaming up with Kushida, even though she believes his academic rating could warrant him a better partner, as he says he can only trust her to show him the ropes around this new environment. Our trio goes to Kiyaki Mall to look for a partner for Sudo again. Asking some Class 1D students reveals that Ryuen and Arisu have both been giving Hosen's class different offers, and each student is looking for the best offer they can get. Suzune asks if they could at least introduce Sudo to other students, but Hosen wouldn't allow them to do such a thing. With this, Suzune realizes she has to change her way of thinking. However, she won't join the game of money no matter what, as she knows her class stands no chance against Ryuen or Arisu in that regard, and it won't solve the fundamental issue to begin with. While they seem to be lost in how to save Sudo, they're approached by Amasawa Ichika, who just happened to overhear their conversation and wants to strike a deal with them. At first, she requests someone who's really strong to be her partner, asking for a wild tournament to test if Sudo really is that strong. Suzune refuses, since she can't comply with such an offer, so Ichika compromises and asks instead for a guy who can cook for her, even if it isn't Sudo, and if she likes the dish, she'll team up with Sudo. Suzune lies and says Ayanokoji had boasted about his cooking skills before, and that he could cook for Amasawa. The deal is set, and tomorrow Ayanokoji will go shopping with Amasawa to get what they need for his cooking deal. Later that day, Ayanokoji meets up with Nanase again as he's walking to class, and she apologizes again to him for what Hosen had done. She proposes that she could set up a negotiation meeting with Hosen if Ayanokoji wanted to. He runs the idea by Suzune, who also seems to be for it. Suzune also prepared a backup plan by negotiating with Class 1B, with Yagami being the mediator between their classes. Afterwards, he goes shopping with Ichika. We see her put ingredients and kitchen utensils into his cart. Once they're back at Ayanokoji's dorm, she reveals that she wants him to make tom yum-goong. She tells him to put his phone away. Ayanokoji does so and goes to the kitchen. He reveals to the viewers that he has an audio device in his ear. Suzune is listening in on the conversation and telling him how to cook the dish. After tasting his dish, she says it's barely passable and agrees to team up with Suro. In return for him buying all the ingredients and cooking for her, she offers to wash all the dishes. Once she leaves, Ayanokoji checks his sink for any audio bugs, still having suspicions for her being the White Room agent. The entire Ichika deal has a lot of cart content, from the specific remarks she made while shopping with Ayanokoji to her inconsistent ability to find items at the shop, as well as a lot more things she did when she came to Ayanokoji's dorm. All of her actions were intended to build up to a later climax, but the anime remains consistent in omitting specific details about how the mind game works. The entire explanation could use its own video, but for now, you just need to know two things. First is that Ayanokoji hadn't suspected something as absurd as audio bugs yet at this point in the novel. And second is that while shopping with Amasawa, he noticed that she was able to find a lot of items really fast, while taking a lot of time to find others, as if she was specifically forcing him to focus more on certain tools. Ayanokoji is alone in his dorm again when he receives a notification from Nanase, saying they can meet tomorrow after class. We cut to an exchange of scenes between Arisu and Ryuuen, as we see each of their sides when it comes to playing the money game in the partner exam. Arisu believes that Ryuuen is pushing her to spend more money to weaken Class A, but she thinks her class reputation will easily overcome this. Meanwhile, Ryuuen is trying to determine which student can choose their alliance without being influenced by private points. They meet up with Nanase in the library. While Suzune and Nanase manage to create a good collaboration plan, a call to Hosen reveals that he won't cooperate unless he's paid, regardless of the other conditions offered. The meeting is split between episodes 1 and 3. Ayanokoji is cooking at his dorm again, this time just for himself, when he gets a call from Karuizawa. She explains to him that the clerk he told her to ask answered regarding a certain item, claiming that some first year bought it, but then was prompted to return by another student. Oddly enough, in the anime, Kei doesn't describe that student's features, nor mention any information about them, nor the student who stopped them. In the novel, however, she's able to give him the name of the student who attempted to buy the item, as well as the features of the student who stopped them. Also, the item was never actually bought, as the process of buying it was interrupted, while in the anime, the item was bought and returned later. In both cases, Ayanokoji calls Kei over to his dorm for later study. Next, we're back in class, and Suzune attempts to ask Koenji to team up with a student of her choosing, since he'll be confident in passing regardless of who he teams up with. But he refuses in typical Koenji fashion. Suzune goes back to her main plan, so she and Ayanokoji have another meeting with Nanase, in which they ultimately conclude that the best approach for everyone currently is to attempt to convince Hosen no matter how hard it may seem. They settle with that and agree to meet in 2 days. We're back once again in Ayanokoji's dorm, and Karuizawa arrives per his invitation. He helps her study for a while, but as they're taking a break, she finds a long strand of red hair. Ichika arrives at the worst possible time for Ayanokoji, who is forced to let her in. Kei aggressively demands to know the nature of Ichika's relationship with Ayanokoji. Ayanokoji explains that he only cooked for her once as part of a deal for her to partner with Suro for the exam. Furthermore, Ichika says that she's there because she dropped her favorite hair tie last time she was in Ayanokoji's dorm. She makes Ayanokoji search under the bed while she goes and looks for it in the kitchen. She doesn't search for long before she claims she found it under the fridge, leaving abruptly, letting Ayanokoji deal with her now angry Kei. The number of allied pairs had reached 105, nearly 70% of the possible choices were gone. While contemplating this, Ayanokoji, quote, runs into Arisu, who offers to give him a partner using her influence. But Ayanokoji turns her down, opting to take matters into his own hands instead. After parting ways with Sakayanagi, Ayanokoji is stopped by 2 other first-year students, Sakurako Tsubaki and Riku Utomiya. They ask if he is willing to discuss a potential partnership, specifically suggesting that he pair up with Tsubaki. The 3 head into Kiyaki Mall to talk over the details, but Ayanokoji ultimately turns them down, stating that he already has a candidate in mind. Despite the rejection, Tsubaki and Utomiya provide him with their contact information before leaving. The next scene we see is from later that same day. Kei meets up with Sato near a fountain. Sato bluntly asks if Kei is dating Ayanokoji, threatening to end their friendship if she is caught lying. Faced with this dilemma, Kei finally confesses the truth, with Sato having realized she had fallen for him even before their previous double date. Overcome with emotion, Sato slaps Kei, tearfully accusing her of being heartless for taking advantage of her despite knowing Sato's feeling for Ayanokoji. Accepting that she's in the wrong, Kei offers her another cheek for a second strike, but Sato finds she doesn't have the heart to do it. The two share a tearful hug and reconcile, deciding to move past the conflict. Finally, it's Sunday night. Ayanokoji catches up with Syougo, asking him how his studies have been going, and we see Syougo's change as a person as he talks about his desire to improve himself, even if Suzune ultimately doesn't return his feelings, as he no longer wants to drag the class down but wants to help it move higher. Suzune joins the two of them soon after, and the three of them head to karaoke where the meeting was planned to be. Episode 4 is when the meeting actually happens. Hosen continues to ask for points in exchange for his alliance, while Suzune doesn't budge, trying to convince him that an alliance on equal footing is his most beneficial move in the future as well. Nanase even brings up the idea that a similar exam like this might come in the future, and reveals that there's a system known as protection points, which allows you to nullify expulsion, and so Hosen could be put into a situation where someone can expel him while they stay safe. Even with this, Hosen refuses and gives his offer, which is getting paid 1 million private points as a collateral, simply an absurd amount. When Horikita stands her ground, Hosen splashes water in her face to intimidate her, and in the novel, he also grabs her from the collar as well. Syougo nearly loses his temper, but Horikita restrains him, refusing to let the situation devolve into a brawl in a public space. Hosen eventually relents, claiming they should move somewhere more private to reach a final agreement. He leads them to a scheduled area behind the thirsty dorms in the novel, while the area is unnamed in the anime. It looks to be a far corner of the school campus. Hosen had intentionally chosen a location away from cameras and witness. Once there, his demand escalates to 3 million points. When Horikita refuses again, a brutal fight ensues where Hosen easily overpowers Syougo, eventually putting him down with a heavy blow to the cheek. He then turns his sight on Horikita, ultimately taking her down as well. Hosen then reveals a knife from his pocket, threatening to stab Ayanokoji if Horikita doesn't submit. Nanase attempts to intervene, but Hosen shoves her aside and charges at Ayanokoji. Rather than dodging, Ayanokoji matches Hosen's momentum forward and thrusts his left hand into the path of the blade, letting it pierce completely through his palm to stop Hosen's movement. Ayanokoji reveals that he saw through Hosen's true plan. Hosen wasn't actually trying to kill him, but intended to turn the knife on his own thigh to frame Ayanokoji for the injury and secure his immediate expulsion. Ayanokoji explains also that he recognized the knife as the exact one Ichika Amasawa purchased during their previous shopping trip, deducing that while Hosen was the one acting in the front, Ichikawa was responsible for the strategy getting this far. Ayanokoji calmly blackmails Hosen, stating that he will report the attempted framing unless Hosen agrees to two conditions: an equal partnership between their classes and a mandatory pairing between the two of them for the special exam. There's two details worth pointing out quickly here. First, in the novel, it didn't rain at all during this entire confrontation, and second, Ayanokoji never removes the knife until later. These two events sort of invalidate a lot of what the characters are talking about. They're really odd changes that don't really make any sense, but moving on. Hosen, realizing he has been outmaneuvered and he is at risk of expulsion himself, grudgingly accepts and leaves. Nanase stays behind to reveal the true motive behind the hostility, and it was that the school has offered a secret bounty of 20 million points to specific first year students for whoever of them could successfully expel Ayanokoji. We see the end result of the partner exam. No expulsions happened, and Ayanokoji ended up winning his bet with Suzune, scoring a perfect 100 in math, with Suzune scoring only 87 behind him. Ayanokoji is approached by Chabashira after Suzune admits her defeat, and he's told that acting chairman Tsukishiro wants to meet up with him. They have a conversation regarding the White Room agent sent to expel Ayanokoji, while he admits he couldn't spot them at all. He also says that it's clear that Tsukishiro is running into some trouble with them. Tsukishiro begrudgingly admits this and reveals that the student has indeed gone away and disobeying orders, despite supposedly having had a perfect opportunity to expel Ayanokoji per Tsukishiro's plan. Tsukishiro also says that sending the White Room agent wasn't his own decision, and that considering they're left to their own devices, they might go extremely far in how to take out their envy and hatred on Ayanokoji.